In the sound design tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make 4 tech house bass sounds that every music producer needs to know. Hi, my name is Vlad and I help electronic music producers transform their ideas into commercial club bangers. And before we start with the tutorial, guys, don't forget to grab my free cheat sheet PDF called 7 Things You Don't Need to Become a Music Producer. And it's about 7 myths, 7 lies that people believe in and that hold so many people back. So yeah, no more talking and let's start with the tutorial. So the first type of tech house bass you're going to learn today is a classic punchy bass, and it sounds like this, really simple. And the notes for my bass look like this, so if you want to copy, you can pause the video and just copy the notes. And now, guys, let's break down the patch itself. So I'm gonna dive deeper into the bass sound design. The first thing I want to talk about for the punchy bass is the volume envelope. So let's go and draw some diagrams. So this one is the main volume envelope, which controls the volume of the synthesizer, are pretty obvious. And we have one more envelope which controls the filter. So if you look here, I have the second envelope and it controls the cutoff of the filter. So let's draw the same thing here. And usually the second envelope looks something like this, maybe with some release as well. So usually it's smaller than the main volume envelope. So let me show you real life example. So this is the envelope I have for the filter. If it's bigger or has more sustain than the original one, it's going to sound like this, and this is not what we want, right? So punchy bass is really about the second envelope, because it controls the filter cutoff, and this is where we get this punchy kind of vibe, right? So you see when we when we play around with the sustain, it really controls the vibe of the bass, because the more sustain we have, the less punchy bass becomes at the end of the day. So I hope you guys get the concept, and just one more time, we have the main envelope, the black one, which controls the volume of the bass line, and we have this, the second envelope, which controls the filter cutoff, right? So it goes here, and it's really, really simple stuff. So now, guys, let's talk about the oscillators, because it's really important here as well. Basically, the oscillator is going to determine what kind of sound will we get. So in this example, I'm using a square and kind of sine waveform. And if you look here, like on the paper, it's just about mixing different waveforms to get different sound characteristics, right? Because square sounds different than sine, and when we combine different waveforms, we get a more complex sound. One more thing you can do FM modulation, FM synthesis, and in fact, this is what I'm doing in my patch for the bass. So as you guys can see here, I'm doing some FM, so the second oscillator, oscillator B, is modulated by the oscillator A, and you can do both. So you can modulate the oscillator B by oscillator A. So either it looks something like this, or it can look something like this. So it doesn't really matter in what order you modulate your oscillators. It's really about the sound you want to get. So for example, what we can do, let's try and bypass the FM modulation and just play with the bass how it sounds. This is without FM modulation. This is with FM. And let's modulate the oscillator A with oscillator B. It's going to get slightly different sound. So you can hear that we get way more complex sound when we combine different waveforms, when we use FM modulation. And one more thing about the punchy bass is voicing, because the bass itself is in mono, and this is how it looks. So this is going to be our main voice of the bass. And usually this type of bass you have in mono, it's not wide, it doesn't usually have stereo effects, although you can add some width, some effects like flanger, phaser, chorus, reverb, delay. I mean, you can really go crazy on here, but the main sound itself is in mono, right? So if I go here and you will see the unison, right? You see that we have just only one sound on both of these oscillators because this kind of bass is mono. And the next bass we have is a sustained bass, and it sounds like this. And the main difference between the punchy and a sustained bass is that the volume envelope is different. So this is going to be the sustained bass, and it looks like this. And if we talk about punchy bass, it's going to be slightly different. So this is how the punchy looks like. And you can see that the main difference is in the envelope. And usually for the sustained bass, it's just one envelope. And when we have a punchy bass, we usually have one more envelope, which might look something like this. You know, it controls the cutoff of the filter. Right? So that is the main difference. And when we talk about the notes, usually for the sustained bass, it looks something like this. You know, we have notes, they overlap each other, and we just don't have free space in between. But when we talk about punchy bass, the notes look something like this. We have a space in between notes, so that is the main difference between these two basses, right? So we have here the space. So that is the difference. And let me show you the notes. So let me show you the notes. As you guys can see here, we don't have any free space in between the notes, and that is the main difference. And if you compare this to the punchy bass, as I've drawn, you can see that we have a space here. And if you look at the picture, that we have this concept. And that is the main difference. And if we talk more about the sound design, we have just about the same concept. We need to combine different waveforms. So for example, here you see that I have different waveforms. So this one I think is a saw, and this one, I don't know, what kind of looks like a sine. And you can also add some modulation. So for example, you can add envelope 2, which is going to modulate the filter, and it's going to sound slightly different. I think I have one more filter. So you can now hear that it becomes more punchy, and just play around and see what kind of bass you want. And these are the main types, like the regular types, and you can experiment and make your sustained bass more punchy with the envelope modulation. So you just drag and drop, and now you have a punchy sustained bass, right? So it's all about experimenting and playing around and just testing what works for your track and for specific purpose, like the vibe of your track, right? The context of the track. All right, guys. So now let's talk about the next type of the bass, and this one is called 808 bass, kind of. So let's have a listen. And now, guys, let's talk about different variations of an 808 bass. So it can be something in the middle between a sustained bass. So this is the first variation of 808 bass you can have. It's somewhere in the middle of a very snappy, punchy kind of bass. So it's this one, as you can see, number 2. And it's in the middle of the number 2 and number 3 version. And basically, it's just a punchy bass. But the main difference between the punchy bass and a 808 bass is that you have this envelope, right? You see the LFO1, which is basically the envelope which controls the pitch of the bass. So if I just bypass, so let's bypass this guy and listen to the bass, how it sounds now. Without the kick. And with the envelope. So what this envelope does, it controls the pitch. And usually it's very, very short and looks something like this. So it's going to control the pitch of the bass. So if you want to do this kind of bass in Serum, what you want to do, you want to go to the matrix section. You want to select the LFO, maybe envelope 3, just the source modulator, right? And you want to select the destination. You go to global and you go to master tuning. And the amount is really about the vibe you want to get and the context of the track, right? Because sometimes you want to do less, sometimes you want to do more. And here you can also play with the rate, because with the slower rate, it's going to sound like we get more extreme kind of pitch. And when we increase the speed, and what you also can do is you want to add a filter, because without the filter, you will get a pretty distorted kind of sound, because I usually like more soft, stubby 808 basses. It doesn't sound that smooth, right? When we apply the filter, and one more filter here, and don't forget about the distortion, because without distortion, with distortion, yeah, sounds pretty cool. And you can also play around with compression, maybe some multiband, without multiband. So yeah, just experiment here and see what works for your track. And I hope it makes sense for you guys. And the last bass for today, guys, is the white pad or Reese bass, and it sounds like this. And the main difference between this bass and all 3 previous basses I've shown you guys is that we have unison, so we have different voices. So let me try and explain it on the paper. So if we are talking about these 3 basses I've just shown you, so this is going to be the first variation. So it's going to be just one voice, right? And let's now draw the diagram for this pad Reese bass. This is how it looks like when we have a wide Reese bass. We have one main voice, so this is going to be the main one, and we can also detune the voices, right, like this. I'm going to mute the second oscillator, and now guys, listen carefully to the voices, how it sounds. And the more we detune the voices, the wider our bass becomes, basically. And what you want to do, you want to add a second oscillator as well, and you can play with the amount of voices here. So as you can see, we can also blend the voices, so you can go something like this, or you can go something like this, and it's going to change the vibe of your bass. But the main concept, the main idea behind this pad Reese bass is that you just need to detune the voices, and basically that's it. And basically, this type of bass is just a sustained kind of bass, but with detuned voices. So these ones, right? So that is the main difference, because here we just have one voice, right? Just one voice. Here we can have up to 16 voices, and that is the main difference. Otherwise, it's just a basic sustained bass I've just shown you in my second example. So that was everything for today, guys. I hope that you've liked this tech house sound design tutorial, and if you've learned something new from this video, and if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that thumbs up button under this video. Don't forget about the notification bell so you don't miss my future videos and important news, because I will be announcing something really cool and something really big soon. And don't forget to comment on the video if you have any questions, or if you'd like to have my help. I'm going to help you in the comments, and I'm always open to start a new conversation with new people. Always nice to connect with new music producers. So that was everything for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.